Welcome to another virtual Live Talks Los Angeles event. We welcome Patricia Cornwell and Jamie Lee Curtis back to our series. We invite you to visit our YouTube channel for over 300 conversations much like this. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Our handle in all three is Live Talks LA. Patricia Cornwell's new novel is Spin in the Captain Chase series. Beyond the Scarpetta series, Cornwell has written the definitive nonfiction account of Jack the Ripper's identity, cookbooks, a children's book, a biography of Ruth Graham, and two other fictional series based on the characters Wynn Garano and Andy Brazil. Jamie Lee Curtis is an actress and author. She has appeared in many acclaimed films such as Halloween, Knives Out, Trading Places, True Lies, Freaky Friday, and A Fish Called Wanda. She has appeared on television in the series Anything But Love, The Heidi Chronicles, and Nicholas's Gift, NCIS, New Girl, and Scream Queens. She is also the author of 12 best-selling children's books. I'm Ted Haptegaber, founder and producer of the series. Towards the end, I will pose some questions from our audience, and I will let you take it from here, Jamie.
Okay, well, welcome everybody. And just by the way, just for your information, it's not like any other conversation you're going to hear on this. I mean, I appreciate Ted kind of lumping us in with everybody, but we're talking about Patricia Cornwell, people, okay? This is not like your run-of-the-mill author yak. This is, you know, this cyber ninja. I want to start with cyber ninja. You write it in the book that special agents, cyber ninjas like me, are required to have a graduate degree. Tell me what a cyber ninja is.
Well, here's the interesting thing. That was kind of my marching orders from the Space Force people. When I first started doing this research really intensely, about 2.5 or so years ago, I got an opportunity to go to Cheyenne Mountain in Colorado Springs, where all the secret squirrel stuff goes on. You know, it's built inside of a mountain. And,
Right.
and Jack Fisher, the astronaut, was at the base there and gave me a tour. And that's where I met General Raymond, who's now the commander of Space Force. I think he might be listening to this. Hello out there. I'm very scared of you because what happened is I was taken to a dinner at his house. And there were more generals there than, I mean, the room was full of generals and astronauts and all these people. And they acted like they didn't know who I was and what I was there. I was just there to have cocktails and dinner with these people.
Right.
And they proceeded to fix me what's called cosmic punch, which is Tang and vodka. And whenever a room full of generals want you to drink cosmic punch, you should say no, because you're probably about to be abducted by aliens, which I was. At one point, all these generals circled me, and General Raymond looks at me and he said, "Now would be a very good time to explain yourself." And I went into dinner with them and they proceeded to have me tell them what I wanted to do with this Captain Chase series. This is before I'd even written Quantum, of course. And I was talking about cyberspace, you know, the satellites, cyber ninjas, you know, everything we fear. Somebody hacking into a hospital. Imagine that these days, hacking into Air Force One, hacking into anything, hacking into satellites up there. These are the cyber ninjas. These are the people. And that's what Space Force wants. And so General Raymond said, look, we want a hero who's kind of a nerd. We want a cyber ninja. We don't want a Top Gun type of thing. That's not what we're looking for this day and age. And so thus we have Captain Chase, who is a cyber investigator for NASA, for their protective services. But she's also, you know, it's in the plans that she's going to go into space, which she does, of course.
But she's not alone. There's more than one way to skin the cat. We learn in Quantum that she's not alone, that there's someone else there who's very much like her. Karma.
Yes.
Can you talk about their relationship and just establish for the people, obviously none of y'all who aren't, you know, didn't devour Quantum and then like sit like me waiting for that next book to arrive. But for the uninitiated, or maybe somebody whose friend is listening in, can you just establish very quickly what Quantum established in the sense of these two sisters?
Yes, that basically we have an unusual story in that the main character has an identical twin. And so in a way, there's almost two main characters, but from the book point of view, it's kind of one because I'm telling it from Callie's point of view. Callie works at NASA. She's a quantum physicist. She's a cyber investigator for the protective services that they have on campus there. And these are real people. I mean, they're shooting MP5s and they're not to be messed with, but they might go in the wind tunnel testing an aircraft while they're at it, which is like cuckoo to me, but there are people like this. So Callie is there. Her identical twin, Karma, is, as best we know, was a fighter pilot in the Air Force. But she's got a secret life. And we begin to get into that and spin, because what you find out is that both of these girls, since before they were born, it's been in the cards that they were going to be groomed to be what is really called the modern guardian of space, not just an astronaut, but these people that Space Force has today, which there are peaceful guardians of space, but that's because we know there's going to be crime up there. There already is, in terms of people fighting over stuff. And wait till people, we have a lot more travel up there than we do. And when they start putting habitats on the moon, which they're going to do, sending people to Mars, I mean, the same crimes will go up there that we have down here, because human nature is human nature. So the fun part about spin is, while I'm going to take you up into space by the time you get to the end of it, it's deeply rooted in good homespun human relationships and problems. The boots on the ground, set in Virginia, especially, that's telling this day and age. You talk about a divided part of the world. And so Callie and Karma, they have special technologies that you find out about in spin, that it's not like the $6 million man or Lindsay Wagner exactly, but it's the bionic stuff that's beginning to happen. Everything that's in this book is either already being done or it's on its way to being done. It's all within the realm of possibility.
So early in the book, there's a scene where Callie is driving her Jeep, driving using GPS. Now, everybody listening to this I pride myself on not needing GPS. I refer to myself as I am MapQuest. You know, that I know, it's some weird like false pride of mine. But most people I know punch in something. And we do it with a complete trust that it will take us where we need to go. It's a blind trust. We don't even think about it. And there's a scene early on page 18 where the possibility of the GPS getting hijacked, where the GPS is not going to take you where you want to go. Is that real? Does that?
Yes.
That made me anxious.
Wait. Not only is that real, where you could hack into someone's navigation system, but in some cars that are really super smart cars, you could hijack the vehicle. And there had been police vehicles that had been remotely hijacked. Anything that is connected to something, including your little remote friend in the kitchen, if you have a Siri or Alexa or one of these types of things, anything, your television, your computer with the camera in it, that I always have covered, by the way, and so should you, except not right now.
I was going to say, then we wouldn't be able to see each other.
But these are all possibilities. When you go out in the beautiful night sky and you look up, and you're probably seeing satellites up there. When you even like 22,000 miles above our planet is called the geostationary orbit, which is where our most highly sensitive communication and other types of satellites are. And if somebody took out something up there that's really important for our military, for GPS, imagine if you lose all flight control on a plane, or I mean, it's endless what somebody could do. And so we're already seeing look at this big hack we're having right now, the worst hack in the history of our country. Hacking is going on, right, that we've been in the middle of. So this is all going on. It's an invisible world that's not as easily seen by people.
Right. But what you also talked about already was the fact that from the beginning of these two young women's lives, there has been some premeditated, predetermined path that involves their parents. And as they have matured and grown, they are identical twins. As we know with the Kelly brothers going up to space, they wanted to study what identical twins, what effect. So here you have identical twins, and yet there is some there is very much some big brother stuff happening. And I really did want you to read, and I know you told me I had to read, but the thing that I want the audience to know.
Everybody would rather listen to you read, including me.
I don't think so. So what everybody needs to know is that fairly early in the book, I mean, we can talk about what happens a little bit in the book.
Sure.
I mean, I spoiler alert. Sorry, spoiler alert. Both of these young women are implanted with something called a sin. Interesting choice of words there, lady, with
Yes.
your acronyms, which is systemic injectable network.
Mhm.
So it's a systemic injectable network that is implanted surgically or
Syringes.
injectable syringes into both of them. And what it becomes is an internal. So for us old enough to have enjoyed 2001 and HAL, and the whole idea of a computer having a life that you have a relationship with. Imagine if HAL, or art in your book, is implanted in you, can actually talk to you, can actually bring imagery to you through glasses, through all this technology. And she kind of wakes up having been not roofied, but kind of roofied,
Mhm.
to wake up with this new realization that this has happened. And this is the page I picked because it really, for me, is where the science and the mind part of it coalesce in such an interesting way, and only in your words does it work this way. So she's just woken up to this fact that she has a sin implanted in her. The nuances are infinite and beyond mind-boggling. I state the obvious. I'm going to look like a wackadoo if anybody's watching, and I can't begin to imagine the misfires as I point and blink like abracadabra, not to mention if the wrong people catch on. Karma and I could both end up dead. The plan isn't to have you dead, coming across as I dream of genie or a wizard. Dick opens his laptop. The idea is for both of you to be stealthy, to draw zero attention while you constantly acquire and transmit data. Everything will be analyzed and tweaked as we conduct high-risk activities with remote human guidance and the assistance of artificial intelligence, AI. He describes what sounds like a high-tech nightmare. How are we supposed to live with something like this? But I already know the answer because it couldn't be more glaring. By and large, Karma and I are on our own, the first of our kind, prototype 001 with no precedent, no other matching siblings who've come before us. One day we'll be the models for others, Dick says, as if we could aspire no higher. And guinea pigs in his top secret project, codenamed Gemini, which is Latin for twins. Including digital ones and based on electric blueprints and schematics, Karma and my individual configurations of implants are identical. Our sins are extensive with room to expand. Dick says as he continues to unfold our destinies, a life plan that wasn't decided by us, even if we agree to it. It wasn't our idea for NASA and the military to repurpose our existences, and I don't appreciate Dick's presumptions, especially when he shows me a female body diagram that supposedly represents the way I'm shaped. No good. I shake my head vigorously. And unimportant as it is in the grand cosmo of things, I don't like being depicted as chunky. I like it less when my sister's noticeably slimmer and more buff body diagram fills the other of the split screens. Nope, nope, nope. Maybe I have to watch what I eat more than Karma does, but that doesn't mean we don't weigh pretty much the same, I let him know. It's just that we aren't built alike, and I have to work harder and might have a little more body fat. All that can be tweaked, he promises. Not some things, I think dismally. My sister and I may be identical, but that doesn't mean we don't have our physical differences. Most noticeably, I begin my precipitous slide into puberty almost a year before she did, doubled over with cramps, outgrowing everything. When it was her turn, she got by with undershirts and extra slim fit jeans, never needing a hot water bottle, underwire, or a Midol. There's not much that won't be fixable and changeable eventually, Dick predicts. And it's unnerving to contemplate the microscopic mission control that's monitoring everything about karma and me, from the amount of cortisol, epinephrine, and dopamine we secrete, how stressed or aggressive we are, to our blood sugar, other hormone levels, diabetes, PMS, in addition to the early detection of emergency conditions in the making, heart attacks, strokes, and diseases we might beat if caught early enough: cancer, neurodegenerative disorder, suicidal, depression. Plus, what annoys, relaxes, arouses, distracts, bores, thrills, entertains, and whether our mode is fight or flight given the predicament. Also, how we honestly relate to and perceive everything and everyone. Meaning there will be few secrets anymore, as we've been watched over by an electric God, a well-meaning but demanding one with judgmental tendencies and a need to know. It's not all that different from chipping your pets in case they get lost. Dick shows me another diagram, and let's be honest, what he's talking about is nothing like that. Implanting a silicone radio frequency identification, or RFID, microchip in your poodle is one thing. It's another to inject a human with scores of sensors and other micro devices, unleashing them under the skin and into deeper spaces, like an array of nanosatellites or a virus. Made of hydrogel and other biocompatible materials, including your own body's own proteins, to prevent inflammatory responses and scarring. Dick shows me his laptop, and we lean against the pillows on the bed like roomies. As you can see, your sin is only partially switched on so far. When might I expect that to change? I want to know, and will I be aware of it? As they say in quantum computing, it all depends, he answers. And I ask him who's in charge of the so-called switching. It's only fair that I know, considering the power that person has, or maybe it's more than one. I add, studying digital schematics and downloads of what should be intensely private. I'm going to cut a bit. Unusual thoughts and moods might cause me to suspect I've been altered, or worse, fear I've become delusional, possibly paranoid or psychotic. How awful it would be if nobody told me what was really going on. How distressing for karma if the same things were done to her and she didn't know. So I want to know, that idea that something has been put and planted in me that I didn't ask for, that I didn't want, and that I don't really have any control over. Where did that idea come from? Is that something that you knew about? Like, I'm fascinated. This fascinated me.
Well, look, these technologies, you can Google it. And of course, Art gets really mad when you talk about Google. That's really like fighting words. Art is
well, sure. Art is
artificial
Google.
research technician. He is Google. He's her AI, her artificial intelligent friend. And that's a whole nother subject for another day. That's a lot of fun. But you know, the whole thing about this is that they know that this is going to be done. And, you know, Callie doesn't say no to it when she's in that room and she knows this implantation is about to happen. But yes, it raises a lot of ethical questions. And one of the questions this whole thing raises, and the more I've studied about these technologies, the more I have wondered about, do we really have free will? You know, a lot of the illusions in this book are like biblical type illusions, like original sin and general, you know, the general comes across as sort of a God figure who, and these are his creations, these two girls. They're sort of the Adam and Eve.
Right, and there's also a little Frankenstein.
Well, it's all of those illusions. It's what, be careful what you create. And we're already seeing this. People like Elon Musk are talking about, you know, where you can have your thoughts. Eventually you could Google, imagine if you could Google with your brain without having to type everything. But all of this, it gets scary because you start having to ask the questions, where does programming end and do feelings begin? Where does biology end and machinery begin? And the more we're hybridizing things, the more tricky these questions are going to get, especially with things like 3D printing human organs and skin and the robotics that are going on out there, which are extraordinary. But all of these things, look, we're seeing this right now all the time with the technologies, especially with this pandemic and everything else. There's a lot of similarity between living through this pandemic and living in outer space. We could be on a spaceship right now going somewhere that's taken us years, and we live in a world we can't access. We can look at it out the window, but we really can't quite touch it anymore. And that's a little bit what the space world seems like to me.
Do you think, though, see, to me, the human mind, John Steinbeck talks about the preciousness of the mind of man, that the forces marshaled against that preciousness are the sort of drugging mind, excuse my French, mind fucking of people. And in East of Eden, he talks about the preciousness, that nothing was ever invented by two people, that it comes from one creative spark. And when we're talking about this AI stuff and being able to modulate and change, as Dick says, we'll tweak it. We'll go in there and tweak it a little. If your cortisol levels go up, we can bring them down, whatever it is. But do you think it's possible to actually get into the mind? Or is the rest of it, do you see what I'm saying? I
do. It's kind of like what you're basically saying is, if you can get into the mind, then who are we? I mean, what is the identification? What is the definition of you or me? And here's my analogy, okay? Because this whole space research has completely changed the way I think about everything, including who we are and why we're here and what happens and what death is, which I don't believe in the same way I used to. And I've been around more death than anybody you've ever met, practically.
Right.
But because what I have realized is, one of the things that you see in laboratories and even on the space station are glove boxes. And humans put their hands in those glove boxes and they manipulate tools and experiments, or they touch moon rocks, or all kinds of things that we can't be in direct contact with, or deadly viruses and petri dishes and these things. But the gloves are not what moves things. It's the hands in them that we don't see. So the question is, who are the hands in the glove box when it's Jamie, when it's me, when it's Ted, when it's all these lovely people out here watching this right now? What moves through us? And that is something that is beyond, I think, our human comprehension. It is what you could call it, the soul, the spirit. It's our our eternal existence. It is the part of us that's quantum. It has no beginning, no end. It can be in more than one place at once, because we're not little particles. We are a wave that's connected to everything. And that's why what one person does affects everybody, just like we saw in Washington. You don't do anything without doing it to everybody else and to your own self, because we are all connected. And that's just good old science. It's quantum physics. And that's also religion, that love thy neighbor as thyself. So all of these things, what I'm hoping that these new books will do, and the same way the Scarpetta books do, that those help us see who we are and who we don't want to be. And don't ever underestimate it. I think that Quantum and Spin, the Captain Chase characters, they can show us that what we can be that's so much greater than we ever imagined, because we might start imagining who we are. I think we have quite a pedigree. I don't believe we're the only people in the universe. And I think we come from something far greater than us. And God, whatever God is, or the God beyond the gods that made us, I don't know. But I'd like to think this cannot be as good as it gets, baby. Can't be.
No. You have a penchant for acronyms. His book is filled with them. As I said, the SIN acronym.
And I can't even remember most of them. If you ask me, I'll probably get it wrong.
I'm not going to ask you. The Systemic Injectable Network. I mean, SIN. It's like, now, do you come up with the word and then the methodology, or do you come up with the methodology and then the word?
No, I definitely am deliberate. Like, for example, the Captain Chase's space plane, which is a really tricked out version of the Dream Chaser, the Sierra Nevada Corporation, their real live space plane, which I've gotten to see the models of and fly the simulator. You can Google it. I'm so in love with that thing. And so I got so caught up in that. I forgot what we were even whatever you just asked me.
Acronyms.
Oh,
Acronyms.
acronyms. So I wanted to call it the Pequod, because as the ship in Moby Dick and then you have a Moby, and I'm thinking of things out there, all, everything that you might come up with harkens back to an earlier fable. Nothing is all that new under the sun when it comes to stories and parables. And so Pequod, propulsion, blah, 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 quantum, whatever, defender. I can't even tell you the whole thing. But I do have a list of acronyms. The nice thing is, though, you don't have to remember what they are to understand what's going on in the book. Because
not at all. I just love them. They're so clever. And every time a new one comes up, I try to figure it out before you tell me what it is.
Well, let me just give you an example. I mean, sin, original sin, that was what the whole Garden of Eden is about. So you have these prototypes that are created by human gods that have manufactured them, and they implant them with sin. Well, originally they didn't know it was anything bad, but everything's programming. Malware is like bad programming that causes someone to be a sociopath, causes someone to be a borderline personality or a narcissist. And we've seen plenty of that lately. And so all of these things are like programming errors. And this is and art. Okay. Remember the two fingers in Michelangelo? To me, science and art, you have to have both, because and what I mean by art, I mean like painting and acting and the heart, things from the heart, because without it, you simply have artificial intelligence which has no empathy, and you do not want decisions made purely by an algorithm that might have bias factored into it. Oh my God, then you got a RoboCop and it's going to shoot somebody because they grew up in the wrong part of town.
So I wrote an acronym for you.
Okay.
It's TALNT. It's talent.
Okay.
Terrific author loaded with nutty talent.
Well, the nutty is the operative word. I am an astronaut. Astronaut, that's me.
Well, you're an astronaut, and I knew that somehow, but so just so you know, now whenever they say your name, it's going to say Patricia Talent Cornwell, and people would be like, what's the TALNT? And then you can tell them that I gave it to you. There's a lot of discussion in the book of data. I'm married to somebody very private, doesn't want any data out there, like super private guy. I am like, on this thing all effing day long. I run my entire life, my children. I run my entire life on my phone, everything. I do my business. I do the store that I run now. Everything is on that little phone. I'm here in front of a computer. I do not use it. I use my phone. But the amount of data, and it's everywhere in your book about how much data is being mined by the AI. And here you have this implanted AI who's throwing all this data, the maelstrom of data, I just think is fascinating. And I just would love to talk to you a little bit more about how much of that really drove the book.
Well, the thing that's fascinating about data is, first of all, NASA people like to say that too much data is as bad as none at all. When you have an agency that's over 100 years old, and a lot of people don't realize that NASA started way back with the Wright brothers at my lovely NASA Langley in Hampton, Virginia, over 100 years old now, that when you've got, imagine all the data, there's so much data that you have to have algorithms and you've got to have computing to find the stuff that you've computed before. So the only way to manage the data that we've created this day and age, because there's almost nothing that's not out there. By the way, even things being filmed from outer space. I mean, you talk about no privacy. Well, I mean, there's stuff up there watching too, which is why we have to be the guardians up there. You don't want the wrong people spying on you when you're walking out to empty your garbage. I mean, you can see cars and license plates from up there. I'm not kidding. So the data is amazing, but here's why it's important more than ever. You talk about fake news. Well, we got to trust data. You can't trust what a lot of people tell you anymore. You can't trust necessarily what you're seeing on social media. So if you want the truth, you've got to have scientists and professionals and your own ability to mine data that you can trust, and be careful where you look, because some of this stuff is very persuasive. And if it's giving you a bunch of baloney, you might make a very bad decision. So I think that there's so much data out there that we all have to develop scientific, logical mindsets. You really do. We all have to be cyber ninjas, in the sense you need to know what the vulnerabilities in your own environment are. If someone wants to hack into you, you need to know what your own abilities are to organize your life. Like, I Google all day long when I'm working on my book, the one I'm writing right now. I'm constantly looking stuff up. And fortunately, I know what to look for because I've been out in the field for so long. But if you didn't know what to look for, I swear, it's pretty tough finding things. But everything is going to be about the organization of data.
Yeah. Well, I feel like you're a great guide for that, obviously, Patricia. But the other thing I really love about this book is, as you said, it's all in the space and in the technology and the AI and the art and the sin and the rest of it. And it's so beautifully told. It's so exciting. This is a thrill ride from the moment it begins to the end. It is fifth gear all the way. It's incredible. But what's amazing to me is that in the middle of the book, you throw in a child. Now, children, so it's a child who's a hacker, who's a kid who we don't know at first, and he's a student. He's like at a launch of something, and you think he's a sort of benign presence of a kind of nerdy kid. And what it turns out to be is that this nerdy kid is actually incredibly sophisticated. And the partnership between Callie and this kid is fantastic. And it humanizes, because of course she and her sister were kids, and she sees herself in this little boy. And there's a moment in the book, his name is Lex, and she says, "How did you learn to be so practical and self-sufficient?" He says, "My parents, but also TV and the internet. You can teach yourself pretty much anything these days, even if you don't have anyone to show you in person." And that really moved me, that this kid was learning. As you said, you can Google anything, YouTube, how to fix anything, hacks, easy things. And again, the one thing that you can't do for this kid is he can't Google love. He can't Google connection. He can only Google the technology, and what he's missing, so sadly, is that connection. And I thought it was so clever of you, right in the middle of this like fifth gear cyber ninja ballsy crazy technology world, that I found myself just like page. And then when this kid gets in, all of a sudden the human feelings came in. And there's a lot of those human feelings between the sisters. There are a lot of those human feelings between the family. And I just wanted you to talk for a second about the humanness of this space story, because at the center of it is a family.
Absolutely. I mean, without the human, there's no point in any of it, because space is just a vacuum. And so we get Callie up there at the very end, but that's a very small part of the story. I want you to have the ride, because everybody should go up in a rocket. So I'm giving you that much. But most of the story is on the ground, because that's where we're all affected. And these are kind of simple people. I mean, Callie and Karma, they may be NASA, and they may be named after two of Jupiter's moons, but they're born on an old little farm.
I was going to say they're farm girls
on the water right there in Tidewater, Virginia. Dad is a NASA nerdy scientist. Mom is a NASA educator. And by the way, mom, she is the powerhouse in all of this. And I can't wait for people to read it to see if they pick up on the subtleties, because she is a force to be reckoned with. And there's some very big secrets you're going to find out about her later on, but not in this book. But she is in many ways, the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain, even more so than Dick Melville is the commander of Space Force in this. But Lex, the little boy who's an orphan, whose parents died in a plane crash, and Dr. Wrong, the evil one, I think may have had something to do with that. We're going to find out. And because she wanted to basically appropriate this little 10-year-old genius. There aren't too many of them out there.
Right.
You know, he's the youngest NASA intern. And so, but all of this is about relationships and ambition and dreams and free will. Because what does that mean? The Bible, we talk about free will. People supposedly have free will. Do we really? Do we really? Do Karma and Callie have free will? No, they don't. Because here's what Mom says about it when she's sitting out on the porch swing with them, looking at the fireflies in the summer. And she says, you can do what you want, but if you don't do what you're put here to do, you won't be happy. But go ahead, do what you want. So that's kind of ingenious, because if you want somebody to do something, make sure they like it, because they won't do it if they hate it enough. I know from times I'm not one to finish a book. So,
but by adding a child, it brought all of that back into the story, because it touches Callie. And then, of course, it makes Callie think about her childhood with Dick
she gets jealous.
and her dad. Well, of
and
course.
She's jealous because Dad, you know, the father's always, you know, he's surrounded by these women, and he's always kind of wanted a son. And there's another reason for that we don't know yet in this story, about something that happened long ago. But the point is that, so he tucks this kid under his wing, because they're both at NASA. And he's doing all the stuff with this little boy that he used to do with Callie and Karma, but yet he was also sometimes very absent because he's off in his own world. And that irks her. You know, I mean, she's a person, and she feels terrible being jealous of a little kid. But, you know, we're not just our genetics, we're our environment, we're everything that's come along.
So,
but it is important to realize this is about humans. This is not just about the technology.
Well, but that's why it's so beautifully done. Because right in the middle of this turbocharge, there's a kid. And children by nature, you can't turbocharge them. Like you have to stop for a minute and think about them and figure out why they're reacting the way they are. And it's just beautifully done, like right in the middle of this, I was going to say movie, right in the middle of the book.
That's what it's supposed to be, remember?
Well, of course, but like right in the middle of it, there's a child. And it was such a brilliant move on your part, because it humanizes the story. So you care about this kid. She cares about this kid. And she knows what it's like to be manipulated by other people. And I just was so thrilled with it. So before I finish, because I bet you if I ask you one more question, then it'll be time to ask people questions, because I'm pretty good at this.
But I do want to say one thing before I forget, because when you asked about a cyber ninja, let me tell you one other quick thing that people don't know. I mean, the first cyber ninja I really met is a Secret Service agent. She's a cyber investigator. I met her at the CIA when I was giving a talk over there. And people don't realize that in law enforcement and the Secret Service, it's amazing the stuff that they're doing. They're my new go-to law enforcement agency, and they've taken me out on their driving range. And you should do that, Jamie. That's exactly where you belong, is on the Secret Service driving range.
Yes, Mommy does.
Yeah. So, but anyway, law enforcement, everybody's having to deal with the cyber crimes. And people need to learn to deal with them themselves, so you can safeguard your own environment, just like locking your doors and turning on your burglar alarm.
Yeah. So it's a perfect way to close our part of the conversation, which is about disruption. Now, we just saw in this country, big disruption, big disruption. But it wasn't disruption that really came out of the blue, if we really think about it. When you start unpacking it all, you know, this disruption started at the beginning of this administration, blah, blah, blah. So it's something that you talk about, Neva, the bad guy, the bad girl in this book. And the mother says something to Callie. She says, if she disrupts someone you care about, she disrupts you. And if something happens to you, it disrupts me. If I'm disrupted, that's the end. That gave me, again, goosebumps on both my arms. Disruption. You know, all of this works if there's not disruption. And yet life on life's terms there's disruption. I just wanted you to talk a little bit about disruption. The word disruption really jumped out at me. And when the mom says that, it's really powerful.
Well, just think about the virus. Think about coronavirus. You talk about disruption. Anything that disrupts life as we're used to doing it causes you to take your eye off the ball, as we used to say back in my old tennis days.
Yeah,
and then
I'm a tennis player.
And then you're going to get whooped by somebody, or you're going to trip over your own feet, or something awful is going to happen. And so disruption in tennis, you psych somebody out. Same thing. So disruption is you do what Neva Wrong did. She masterminds a hacking into NASA, and a rocket blows up and the space station loses all contact with Houston during a spacewalk. And you cause, like the Atlanta, the Olympic bombings years ago, you have initial devices, secondary devices, or you might have a tertiary device somewhere, so that people are running all over the place, not knowing what to do. And so that is a very terrible and tried and true weapon, which again is why the cyber protection is so important. Because if somebody disrupts important satellites up there, I mean, it could bring down everything here. Imagine, like, you talk about disruption. If your house, all the heat turns off, your phones go dead, like when the guy did the bombing and in front of AT&T in Nashville, and then you suddenly don't have phone service. I mean, we are so dependent on things that we really can't, we can't do what they say, like dead reckoning and flying. You're so used to gadgets that you don't know how to find your way home anymore. Well, there's a lot of truth to that.
That's why I'm MapQuest, by the way. That's why I have an internal MapQuest, because I'll always find my way home. Okay, obviously there are people who want to ask you questions. I know one of the questions is simply, is Scarpetta jealous of all of this energy that you're pouring into these new girls, and what's happening with Scarpetta?
Jealous? First of all, I'm not sure she knows I exist, and she gives a rat's tootie about what else I might be writing. That woman is way too formidable to get jealous. And in fact, I hadn't seen her for a while, but I'm working on a new Scarpetta book right now that will be out.
Of course you are.
The end of this year. And I haven't seen her in 4 years, and she's now living in Northern Virginia, and she's involved in Washington. She's on the Doomsday Commission, and she is a piece of work. She is, I am having such a good time. I said, who did that to your cornflakes? Because she's hell on wheels right now. She's flown in like a dragon.
Really exciting news.
And she's living in the same world that we're all living in.
So is this the first time you've actually said the words that there's going to be a new Scarpetta book this year?
I think it's the first time anybody's heard it. I've talked about it behind the scenes.
But you are getting a absolute, like, what do they call that?
It's a scoop.
A scoop.
I'm giving you a scoop. I haven't even signed the contract yet, but I'm working on it, and you'll be hearing about it soon. And it's going to have some cool space stuff in it too. I'm just telling you, she's not going up there, but she's going to deal with something bad that happens up there. In addition, lots of bad things happening on the ground right in your own backyard. So
how
much
thrilling.
More fun and gore to be had.
Well, now I feel like my work is done because I got a scoop out of her. So now let's ask some audience questions.
Thank you very much, Jamie. We have a few questions. The first one is, lady writes, do you know how one of your books is going to end? Or does it evolve as you write? I've heard authors say they go where their characters take them, and I've heard other writers say they write the last sentence of the book before they even start the book.
No, I've never been able to write the last sentence of the book. I'm not sure I can even write the last sentence of the book when I get there sometimes, but certainly not in advance. No, I got to tell you something. When I was writing Cruel and Unusual way back in 1992 or something, I did not know who the killer was until Scarpetta opened a door and these two eyes were looking out at her. I went, oh my God, run. And
Wow.
I, I don't know. I let her tell me. And with Captain Chase, I knew I was going to get her up into space, but I didn't really know everything that was going to happen up there. And she decided to stay. She said, "You know what? I'm not ready to leave yet. I know you're done with your book, but I'm going to hang around up here for a while. I'm kind of tired of you anyway. You're kind of a pain in the ass." So, delete, delete, revise, delete, delete, revise. They get tired of it. Characters hate being revised all the, edited constantly. But no, I don't know, but I do, I do research and I go where it takes me, and I try to channel. I just try to tell the story and get out of the way, and have the writing take you on a trip that you wouldn't get to go on otherwise.
Well, I will tell you right now, I was not prepared to go on this trip, and I loved my trip.
Thank you.
Just saying. By the way, hot author, just
That was a few
talent.
years ago.
There's your talent. I know it was, but whatever. Okay, continue.
So next question, Patricia, your characters are so rich and so detailed. Does Scarpetta get in the way of other characters? Do you ever find yourself saying, "Please stay out of this. You're interfering with me developing another character"? Do they?
No, I haven't had that happen, but I have had her not want to do something that I decide that she should do. When I was starting a new Scarpetta book, I thought it'd be really good to open it with her on the space station. And I wrote a whole scene that she was up there, and then she just said, "No, I did that enough so that you can learn what it's like, so you can help Callie Chase or something later on. But I'm going back down to my garden. I'm not interested." And so, no, I mean, she did not want to be there, so I
Wow.
removed her.
So interesting.
It's if you do it the right way, they surprise you. I think it's very similar. I don't have children, of course, but I would think children, they're part of your DNA, but then they surprise you because you go, "Where did you get that from?" Right? And I think characters do that. They create you as much as you create them. It's a viable living thing if you're doing it the right way. And it's an honor and a privilege, and it sure is hard work.
Patricia, if you were not a writer, what would you be?
A loser. I don't think I'm very good at anything else much, really. I mean, I decided to be a writer in college because I couldn't do science. I couldn't do math. I have no sense of direction. I'm only a pilot because I have instruments that tell me where to go. So I don't know what I would be. I don't know that I could be much of anything else. It's just not a strange thing that I don't have I wanted to be a professional tennis player. I wasn't good enough to do that. And now I'm a little long in the tooth for that, I think. But I just can't imagine myself being anything but a storyteller. I believe I was put here to do that, not to be the story, but to tell other people's stories, whether it's the Secret Service or Space Force or NASA or astronauts or people who work there, or people who work in the morgue, or a Jamie Lee Curtis. The question is, or Ted, and all my lovely people out there. It's always the same thing. What's it like to be you? What's it like to be any of us? And what's it all about?
What are some of the books you loved as a child or prior to you embarking on a literary career? What authors did you like and why?
I was very simple taste. I would read every book on archaeology I could find when I was in grammar school, and nothing you'd ever have heard of. I liked the Boxcar Children. I don't know if you know about that series, but it's sort of these orphan kids that living in a boxcar, and I was intrigued by these kids, and I really loved that. So I read. I didn't read a lot of the typical things that I didn't really read any real literature till I was forced to in college, at which point I thought George Eliot was a man, which was embarrassing. So, but I read today. I also like to read poetry. I love good poetry. My favorite is The Wasteland, T.S. Eliot. I think that great prose begins with poetry, that it's like lyrics and music. You need both. And without poetry in your prose, you don't have the music that goes with the words. And so I always tell writers, spend some time writing poetry. It's good for you.
Next question is a very LA question: adaptation into a TV series or a movie.
Well, you know, I've been chasing after Jamie for several years now. I mean, I keep asking her to do these interviews thinking maybe she would want to do something with my books. You know what I'm saying? She did try to send me to Craigslist last time because I couldn't seem to find anyone to play Scarpetta, but I don't know. We can hope for that. But there's some interesting conversations going on. I think that Captain Chase would be so much fun for TV.
Next question is, how do you get an agency like NASA to work with you and give you access and help you?
Well, truth is, first of all, I'm very persistent, and I would do anything they would let me do. And when they wouldn't let me do certain things because they're very strict, then I would deal. I have experts. I've had some really wonderful people helping me behind the scenes. You know, former astronauts, scientists at NASA, a NASA Protective Services friend of mine at Langley who introduced me to that whole part of that world that I didn't know about. I mean, here's somebody walking in the cafeteria at NASA Langley. She's got a Glock on her belt and pink handcuffs behind and in a uniform. I look at her, who the hell are you? Next thing I know, I'm going over her department and seeing what they do. And it was, you know, that's so that, you know, the most important thing is they used to tell me when I was a journalist, make sure you can always have lunch with the person after you're done. So that if you want to do research, you've got to build trust with people. You can't just go sailing on in there and think they're going to open their coffers to you when they're dealing with proprietary secrets, national security. So I try to make myself trustworthy. I try to quid pro quo. Say, look, you let me in, I'll tell you everything I'm doing. I'll even show you stuff if you want to see it. I'm not here, hey, Secret Service, I'm not here to cause problems. Hey, CIA, I swear I don't want to cause problems. In fact, I really wouldn't with any of those people, you know? So I think they could figure it out pretty fast if they wanted to. So I try to be collaborative. Everything is about teamwork, all of it. Everybody has got to put out their hand and take the next person. If you're going to make a movie, a TV show, you're going to put a rocket in space, you're going to live on the moon, you're going to live in space on a space station, whatever. You've got to do it together. And people can't, just me, myself, and I ain't going to hack it. It doesn't work. You got to get out of your way and get out of way of progress. And that's hard because we all have egos, but you got to do it.
All right, our last question is, I'm going to try to combine them. It's several questions all about writing and process. So people want to know, do you do all the research and you have all the facts and then you sit down and write? And then when you do sit down and write, is it 6 hours a day? Is it 10 hours a day? Describe the place you write, you know, share some of that with us.
Well, fortunately, I've been doing research for a long, long time. So I have a big database that I don't always have to go out and do that every time. But I think my process is I try to start with a scene, an image, something that intrigues me. And meanwhile, I go out and do generalized research into what that subject is. Like if you're going to write about NASA, I started visiting the campuses, the centers, because there's 10 of them in this country. A lot of people don't probably know that. You know, Johnson Space Center, Kennedy, Langley, Ames, you know, all JPL, all these places where they're dealing with all these different aspects of what's going on. And I get ideas. I'll give you an example. For example, one of my early trips to NASA Langley, one of my brilliant friends there, Ken, I call him Magnetic Man because he's into all this electromagnetic energy satellite stuff. And he said, hey, you want to see the radome up on the top of the hangar? You know, the radome is in my books. It looks like an igloo and it's on top of the old huge NASA hangar at Langley that goes way back to the Apollo days. And he didn't tell me I had to climb up there on a ladder the last 20 feet, 100 feet above ground. And I'm afraid of heights. But I never would have gone up there if I'd known how scared I was going to be, because it was 10 stories up. And if I had fallen, that would have been the end of that. But when I got up there, I got this idea about why couldn't you hide in there? Do you know? I think that, I mean, what's to stop somebody from camping out in one of these places up here? I got all these weird ideas. The point is, if you go and visit something, it will speak to you if you get a chance. If you can see something for real, go see it. I couldn't have written about the morgue all these years had I not spent all that time with dead people and autopsies and crime scenes. I mean, it tells you what it wants you to know, and it begs you to listen, even if it's unpleasant. It stinks. It's sad. It's freezing cold out on that launch pad at Wallops Island when they were showing me where the rockets go up to the for the cargo resupplies. But the most beautiful thing about it, in the dead of winter, I was standing out on that empty pad and the wind blowing through the metal played music. It was spacey music, the sounds that you wouldn't know if you didn't show up. So I tell writers, show up if you can. And even in the days of COVID, be curious, look things up. It doesn't matter if you can say things beautifully, you got to have something to say. Go find it.
Well, guess what? You found it.
Well, I'm still working at it.
I know, but thank you for Spin. It's a great book.
Well,
It's a
thank you
fantastic read.
Thank you for that, Jamie, as always. Thank you.
Thank you,
Yeah, my
Jamie.
pleasure.
Great to have you back, Patricia. We're
Thanks,
honored
Ted.
that we've hosted you for your last 2 other books as well. In
Well,
closing,
I'm honored
we're
to
going
be
to watch
back.
we're going to watch this little video. Give us a little teaser about what's in the video. And
Okay, well, just real quick, it will show you a bird's eye view of some of the research I've been doing. You're going to see me going up in the zero gravity plane where you have no gravity for a while and I'm floating. You're going to see me, the dream chaser, that sexy thing, and whoosh, landing on a runway. You know, you do it remotely. You're going to see me at the Secret Service firing range where they're giving me some lessons, and in the driving range, which, oh, Jamie, I'm telling you, that's got your name all over it.
Thank you.
And then you're going to say, you have way too much fun.
before we go to the video, thanks, Jamie, for coming back to Live Talks Los Angeles to talk with Patricia about another one of her books. Again, Patricia's new novel is Spin, and you can purchase a signed copy in the link below. Enjoy the video.
Remember, I do the research. I run around with astronauts and Space Force people and trying to learn what they're doing. It started me thinking, like, who would Scarpetta be if I were creating her now? Where would I go that's new and different? And I thought, well, probably be NASA.
You could skydive from in here. This is like a spaceship launching another spaceship. This is probably as close as I'll ever get to being an astronaut. I'm getting in the bubble car.
Now short of that as well.
The good thing is that you're just in a simulator.
That's what aliens sound like.
This is so cool. That's cool.
For the record, Captain Chase will do better at this than I just did.
So hold on tight to that.
Who needs NASCAR? I'll make y'all look good, don't you worry. It's easy to do anyway.
She said you missed your calling. You should have been an astronaut.
Yeah. Thank you. It's amazing what you do. Amazing what all of you do. Me, I just take notes. I am blown away by this.
Patricia's new novel is Spin, and you can purchase a signed copy in the link below. Thank you for joining us.